Hello, I'm Matthew Parry, Director of SME Graduate Employment, the specialist graduate recruitment agency for small to medium sized businesses. So today I'm going to speak about how undergraduates and graduates can prepare for an interview. Now, if you are selected for an interview, it's vital that you spend time preparing. You may be surprised how many interviewees don't do that, and very rarely will they be offered the job. A real shame, sometimes they could have been perfect for it. A lot will be expanded on research you've already done but when you were applying, but I would say you need to invest at least another half hour to hour to prepare, and ideally more. Good preparation really can make all the difference. And you need to make sure that you're researching the business. At the very minimum, look at the website, learn a bit about them and what they do, projects that they've completed, sectors that they supply to, that kind of thing. There may also be information on things like company values. That's going to be hugely important if they have got them. You may be asked, what do you know about us? And it can be very awkward if you can't say anything. Of course, you should have been on the website before, but doing a bit more research will help. You don't need to memorise a huge amount. Perhaps have a sentence or two to summarise. If it's a technical type role, think about how your duties would fit in with a bigger picture. If it's a more commercial role, then you really need to be looking at other things like their social media channels and competitors. Go through the job description again and make sure you're ready to discuss this if you're asked, and be ready to discuss any potentially difficult issues if there are any, for example a 2-2 degree or a gap in employment. Initially you may be asked to tell the interviewer about yourself. It's often just to break the ice and help you relax, and also so that they can learn a bit more about you. Sometimes it may be in relation to work or studies, other times it may mean a more general answer. I would say a mix of the two may be best, but not in too much depth, maybe a minute or so, and then they can ask you to expand on anything if they want to. Often the questions will be competency based. For example, tell me about a time that you did something. It's not always easy to predict what they will be, but in general they'll be related in some way to the duties or skills required. And a good way to answer this is the STAR method. You can see a link to my website where there's a blog with a bit more detail about this at the end of this video, but briefly summarize it. You give a situation that you were in, a task, what you did and why, action, what did you do. If it was a team example, make sure you focus on your involvement. Result, so what was the outcome, include any recognition or accomplishments. Reflection, was there anything you changed or took forward with you afterwards? And try and choose an example with a positive outcome, including where you learned something. Or you could be asked strengths-based questions, which are more about you. It could be about strengths and weaknesses, what motivates you, why you want the job. Again, try and focus on things that are relevant to the role. Try and not say the first thing that comes to mind. Think before answering, and if needed, you can ask to have a short time to consider an answer. Try and give responses that are related to work, even if the work was not directly related to the role you're applying for. Education examples can sometimes be weak. So for example, if you're asked about when you worked to a deadline, if you say that you had an essay to hand in, it's not the most dynamic of things. So a better thing would be, a day at work where you had to prioritize things because something unexpected came up, for example. At the end of the interview, you may be asked, have you got any questions for us? And it won't give a good impression if you say no. So try and have a few of these memorized or write them in a notebook and ask if it's okay to refer to this. I would say 2 is ideal. Any more is pushing it a bit. And think about who the interviewer is. If they're a line manager, then something technical is going to be ideal. But if it's with a more general manager or someone from human resources, just be aware that they may not be able to answer anything too technical. So maybe ask about the company culture, what they enjoy about working there, or opportunities for development. Avoid things like salary or holidays, sick pay, anything like that, or things that you should know already because it's on the website. Some employers like to do an initial first stage interview, then a follow-up one. There can be various reasons for this. In some cases, the first interview can be more in-depth, or in other cases, it's the other way around. Either way, there's a couple of things to bear in mind. Firstly, I would say after the first interview, write down the questions that you were asked and your answers. Then think about them. Was there anything you wish you'd said that you didn't? Or was there a better example you could have given? Or if you're happy with it, that's not a problem. There's a chance the question may be asked again, particularly if there's somebody else going to be at the second interview. So you've got the chance to update your answer or leave it as it is. It's okay to repeat it. So while you will have done well to get through, there's still work to do. So make sure you build on what you've already done. It may be new people you're meeting or different questions, so you need to continue to impress. In the first interview, you may have learned more about the business and role. You can use this when thinking about questions to ask them if you're given the opportunity to do so. Some other things to bear in mind: thank the interviewer for their time at the end. If your interview's through a recruiter, call or email them as soon as possible afterwards to give your feedback. This is hugely important in case the employer calls the recruiter to discuss. There may be an initial online interview through Zoom or Teams, or maybe by telephone. Remember, they are still interviews. Make sure you go somewhere that you're undisturbed. If it's online, try and get somewhere with a plain or uncuttered background if possible, or make use of the background effects option if there is one. If you're using your phone, make sure it's positioned properly so they can see you, and test that before the interview. And make sure you've got the invite email ready so you're ready to join the meeting on time. In terms of clothing, I would say err on the side of caution. For females, there's more scope for different smart types of business dress. For males, it was always a suit, tie and shirt, but now that's been relaxed to a great extent. I would say at minimum, a shirt, trousers and shoes. Make sure the shoes are polished and the clothes are ironed. For face-to-face interviews, make sure you know where it is and how you will get there. Plan to get there early, maybe half an hour or so. You can wait somewhere nearby, then go into the offices 10 minutes before. Don't go into the offices too early. It can leave people feeling awkward. And if someone has given you a lift there, then they'll probably need to wait somewhere else too. They can't really be going into the offices and sitting there while you're interviewed. If you get nervous, there's some things that may help, such as making sure you breathe deeply, maybe even saying to the interviewer that you're slightly nervous as you really want the job. That in itself can show a bit of confidence and also lessen the risk of mistaking nerves for something else, such as lack of preparation or disinterest. The interviewer liked you enough to invite you for an interview, so they'll want you to do your best. Try and get some eye contact with the person you're speaking with. A lack of this can sometimes be a reason for an interviewee being unsuccessful. How much? Well, I've read different views about it. In general, about 50% of the time, and in 10-second bursts. Anything more can be a bit uncomfortable for the interviewer. A quick glance could indicate disinterest. Try not to fidget. It can give an impression of distractedness or nervousness. It's a problem I've got myself. I've got a lot of nervous energy, so a coping mechanism I have is to hold my hands together, and then I can't do it. Now, research shows that at least 10% of people are neurodivergent, and that neurological variations can include autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, tics, various things. Some of these conditions may result in some of those behaviours that I've just gone over. For example, an autistic person may find it difficult to hold eye contact. So how do you approach it? In the link to the blog at the end of this, there's a link to an article that gives a great perspective. It was the writer herself was autistic. She turned her condition into an asset in terms of the role because of certain strengths that she had as a side effect. And she also made the interviewer aware, so the actions couldn't be misinterpreted. Now, I know that's not easy to have the confidence to do this. If it's through a recruiter, it'll be a bit easier because they're third parties. So do mention it, and then it can be passed on, so the interviewer's aware. And if you require any reasonable adjustments to be made, then please do ask. So I hope you found that video useful. It's been a summary of some of the key areas. If you'd like to find out more about certain areas, then an internet search will bring up more information. At the end, there will be details of my website. There's a link where you can see the blog that relates to this video and various other blogs about the student and graduate employment market, and hints and tips on the interview and application process. And you can also see graduate jobs, graduate placements, undergraduate internships and placements, adverts, and there's also testimonials from other students and graduates who have helped. Thank you for listening.